Today we reach the end of a series that has taken us through the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, what I consider to be two of the most obscure books of the Bible. Covering the period of Israel's history in the decades following the Babylonian exile, these books deal with the basic tasks the people set for themselves. But they also represent an important school of thought in ancient Israel, but by no means the only school of thought. We tend to assume that the Bible always speaks with one voice, but a closer, more honest look reveals that sometimes there are competing narratives at work, and those who collected these books sometimes included divergent points of view because only taken together do we get a more complete and comprehensive understanding of what it means to be God's people. Ezra and Nehemiah represent a relatively conservative perspective, one which emphasized the need to maintain strict separation from other nations and especially from their worship practices. Today's reading provides a vivid example of what this looked like in actual practice. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Thursday, January 27th, 2022. In the closing chapter of the book of Nehemiah, three specific challenges faced Nehemiah, and his tactics are telling. We'll deal with two of those three. The first challenge was keeping the Sabbath day holy. That meant no work of any kind could be allowed from sunset on Friday until sunset on Saturday, the beginning and the end of the Sabbath day. What Nehemiah found in Jerusalem and in the surrounding area was a little different, though. He described the situation this way. In those days, I saw in Judah people treading with wine presses on the Sabbath and bringing in heaps of grain and loading them on donkeys, and also wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I warned them at that time against selling food. Tyrians also, who lived in the city, brought the fish and all kinds of merchandise and sold them on the Sabbath to the people of Judah and in Jerusalem. Labor and commerce on the Sabbath. Unacceptable for a people who needed to follow the commandments in order to maintain their distinctive flavor. But some of the offenders were Jews, while others were foreigners. As a result, Nehemiah had a two-pronged response. He shamed the Jewish offenders. As for the outsiders, he ordered the gates of the city closed from sunset on Friday until sunset on Saturday, not allowing vendors, mostly people selling food, from even entering Jerusalem at all. He even enlisted the Levites to guard the gates of the city in order to keep the Sabbath holy. He apparently considered the defense of the city on this day to be not just a civil military matter, but a religious matter. So far, so good. Next, Nehemiah confronted the question of mixed marriages. He described the situation this way. In those days also I saw Jews who had married women of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab, and half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod, and they could not speak the language of Judah, but spoke the language of various peoples. Whatever else you may think about marriages between people of different religions, Nehemiah's response will strike you, pun intended, as excessive. I contended with them and cursed them and beat some of them and pulled out their hair. And I made them take an oath in the name of God, saying, "You shall not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons or for yourselves. Did not King Solomon of Israel sin on account of such women? Among the many nations there was no king like him, and he was beloved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, foreign women made even him to sin. Shall we then listen to you and do all of the great evil and act treacherously against our God by marrying foreign women?" Cursing, beating, pulling out hair. I get the importance of maintaining Jewish identity and religious integrity, and maybe we can excuse his behavior as being part of a character rooted in a specific time and place, far removed from our own time and place. But I certainly do not think this mirrors the sort of reaction that would be appropriate in our day and age and in the place where we live. Maybe in Afghanistan, but here, no. But notice what Nehemiah says when he extracted an oath. Remember how I said the books of Ezra and Nehemiah represent one side of an ongoing debate within ancient Judaism? Nehemiah specifically refers to King Solomon in a negative perspective as an example of what happens with mixed marriages. Let that sink in for a moment. You will find whole portions of Scripture that unequivocally laud Solomon. But the Ezra-Nehemiah school of thought is clearly represented in Nehemiah's words here. Solomon may well have been a great king, they would say, but he made a crucial mistake in marrying women from other nations. Turns out we always live in tension as a people of faith between the need to maintain a relatively distinct identity and set of religious practices on the one hand, and being open to other people and other religions on the other hand. Look, there's no magic bullet on how to thread this needle successfully. All we can do, I think, is to follow the guidance of the prophet Micah, to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. And now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do, this day and in all the days ahead.